It's time to kick the flux capacitor and head back in time to your favorite retro pop culture trivia show. Wait, I know this. Get it, homies.
All right, folks, it is time once again to get things started here. We're going to have a ton of fun, I promise you. We've been talking about doing some live shows. It's been a while, hasn't it? It has been a hot minute, that's for sure, since we've been live. Welcome to Wait, I Know This, the fastest growing retro pop culture celebrity interview show in the world on the internet. We are excited. Now, our guest tonight is someone that I have been trying to get for a long time. We have been shooting for this for a good while. I got to tell you, it's someone that honestly, for probably, I would say, a year, I've been trying to get our a guest, just kind of reaching out to her here and there, wherever we can, and we finally got her. So you may remember, and I'm going to, we're going to trigger some memories here for you. We're going way on back to the 1990s. Baywatch was a huge show. Everybody watched that show, and celebrities came and went on that show. There were some that stayed for a long time. Most of them would start there and then launch to movies, which is exactly what our guest tonight did, and stayed in our public eye for so long, and still in our hearts, that's for sure. But I want everybody just to give a big shout out and a welcome to Erika Eleniak, who joins us now, and she has been around for a long time, doing great things, and still all over the web. How are you today, Erika?
Hi, that was a lovely introduction. Thank you. I'm doing wonderful. I'm doing amazing. How are you? And thank you for having me. I'm glad we could finally figure it out.
I mean, hasn't it literally? I really think it's been a year that I was reaching out to you and finally got a hold of you. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah. Oh, it's my pleasure. That's horrible when I hear that. It's embarrassing. It took us so long to get it together. I'm sorry. Of course, I blame only myself, but yeah, I'm glad we finally got it all together.
Well, we just kept missing things. You know, we were like missing each other every time she was available. I wasn't, or vice versa, and we got it going.
Right.
So I want to go back to, let's talk a little bit about you and when you started out. By the way, I want to give some credit here because we're showing a picture. It's a beautiful professional shot that Stephen Wada did of you.
Yeah.
And we're talking a little bit about your background. So you grew up, you're from California originally, is that correct?
I am, yes, that is correct.
Now, where did you grow up and how did you get started in show business?
Well, we kind of moved around a little bit, pretty much just all over Southern California. I was born in Glendale. We lived in Canoga Park, in Van Nuys, and Sherman Oaks. We just pretty much the San Fernando Valley until I was older. And I started in the industry, my parents split when I was really young. I was about 5. So I feel like around the age of 10, my dad was actually dating someone who worked for a film company. And whenever they needed extras, back then they would do films for training purposes. If you were going to work at like a fast food place, you would, as a potential employee, you would watch a training film. And so we did a couple of those, just odd, weird little things, my baby sister then and I, and even my dad. And so they would kind of throw us in those things. And, it was just kind of a conversation. Do you want to continue to do this? And I landed some commercials and it just sort of stuck from there. So that's how the little journey began.
And what were some of your early commercials? Do you remember those? I love asking people this because they're so funny.
Oh, yeah. My very first commercial there were these little underwear for kids sets. They were little tank tops and underwear. They were called Underoos.
Oh, yes, I remember those.
Do you remember Underoos?
Yes,
so I
absolutely.
did Star Wars Underoos, and I did C-3PO. And it was I got run over by R2-D2, and I remember crying during that filming. The robot ran over my foot. I remember being a total baby about the whole thing. And then I was teased, let me tell you. I was teased all the way through to high school. And when I did that, I was 10, so I would have been in about probably 5th grade.
Oh my
So Underoos was
gosh.
my nickname for a long time.
Hey, but you know what? I'm sure they weren't laughing in the 1990s when you landed your role. What? No, well, let's go back. I want to talk, but before we get to that, because I'm skipping ahead on myself here. So you did some
Sure.
commercials, and then what was your first big break? Because I was looking back through some stuff on you, and the earliest thing I found was it E.T.?
Well, yeah, so I started at 10 and ET I was 12. So basically in those 2 years, I did a couple guest spots on some TV shows. I did some plays. I worked in theater. I did some modeling. And then, in fact, I was in an acting class that was doing a showcase, just to show what the kids were doing at the Debbie Reynolds studio. And I remember because my scene partner was an adult, because it was a father-daughter scene where most of the kids were working with other kids. We got to go and do the adult showcase as well. And in that audience, a talent scout for Steven Spielberg was seated.
Oh my gosh.
So, yeah, it was just serendipitous. It's just meant to be how, when you look back on your life, how fun and mysterious, and you can put all the pieces together, and how it all comes together is so fascinating. And yeah, so I was asked to go in and meet with Steven Spielberg and just talk with him, and there was nothing to read. That was the thing, there was a few lines that ended up being cut, and it was just kind of ad-libbed anyway in the classroom with the frogs, but it really wasn't a character in the script that had any lines or anything. So he just wanted to meet with the potential actresses, and so that's what we did. He, at the end of the interview, he said, "You want to be in my movie?" And I was like, "Yeah."
Oh my gosh. When Spielberg says, "Do you want to be in the movie?" No, I don't think so.
But mind you, now at 12, I really didn't have any concept of who Steven Spielberg was.
Oh,
and
that's
I
true.
certainly was not in awe like I am today, because I just didn't know. You know what I mean? I didn't know any better, and yeah. So he was just a really cool guy.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So that's how that came about, and so that was the first. But also too, that was very secretive. That whole thing was done in secret. They gave everyone, or at least us, probably the smaller players and day players and things, a fake title, a working title. And a little fun fact, it was called A Boy's Life. And at the beginning of the movie, I think it's the opening shot, where there's a boy doing his paper route. He goes through town, and there's the movie theater with the big marquee, and the name of the movie on the marquee is A Boy's Life. So that was kind of cool, to do these little cool things. But yeah, because especially back then, it may even still be the case today, I don't know, but there's always the panic or the concern that because a big epic movie of these proportions takes a while to shoot and to edit, you could turn around and do a TV movie very quickly. So they were very protective of the material, that somebody didn't rip it off and make a quick.
Well, and rightfully so, because they're afraid.
Right.
I mean, that's a big risk, for any of that.
Right.
So let's talk about what, for people that don't know, talk about the E.T. role. What did you do?
Well, the name, he actually gave me, again, another gift from Steven Spielberg, who was just so kind to me. He actually gave me a credit in the main cast. So when you pull up like the main cast, one of the last characters is called Pretty Girl, because I didn't have a name. And he gave me, it was just so sweet, but to give me an actual character name and title in the main drop-down credit was really special. Because that certainly, it was a small role. I'm at the bus stop, and so basically Elliot and I are in the same classroom together. And I have a crush on him. You can kind of see it, because this character tries to flirt with him at the bus stop. And then in the classroom, what's happening when we're studying, we're about to dissect frogs. This is the moment in the movie when E.T. is at home and has discovered the beer in the fridge.
Oh, that's right.
So E.T. gets drunk, and this is also one of the first times that we discover that whatever E.T. is feeling, Elliot is attached to that. They're synonymous with each other. So now he's feeling drunk in the classroom. And E.T. finds the remote control. So he grabs the remote and he's starting to flip channels on the TV, and he comes to the Maureen O'Hara, John Wayne scene where John grabs her in the wind and has this big dramatic kiss. So that's basically what happens to Elliot. He frees the frogs. He pushes this poor child on the ground and stands on him, because I was about a foot taller, and kisses me in the classroom. So I'm the little girl that Elliot kisses, basically.
I remember that. I remember that scene because I remember the frogs, that being everywhere.
Yeah.
Now, I read somewhere that that neither one of you were all that excited about that kissing scene. You were like 12 and he was like 10 or something, right?
Exactly. No, and in fact, he was in a girl haters club, and I cried. So Stephen came to my dressing room with my mom and me to talk to us, to comfort us, to say we're going to close this set, and he explained what a closed set was, which is basically the only people that need to be on set will be there. And even, in fact, those people that are running the monitor won't be in the room with you. We're going to move that little, they call it video village, and we're going to move it outside so that literally there's a camera operator and, a couple people in there that have to be there, and that's it. And so he calmed me down for a bit, and then he had to go speak to Henry as well. And, I don't know what he said to Henry, but we both got our talks, and we're just assured that everything would be fine and quick too. He would try not to torture us or do it too many times.
Absolutely, yes. That's so cute. That's obviously to be able to say that you're a part of that movie is pretty big, because that's one of the greatest movies of all time in my book.
Yeah, I agree.
So you did that, and then 6 years later, and I finally found clips of this, which I can't show for copyright purposes, but if you're at home, Broken Angel and The Blob. The Blob cracked me up, by the way. That movie was, I love horror movies, and the cornier they are, the better, and that was awesome. So how old were you at that point? That was 1988. Well, you don't have to tell that if you don't want to give your age.
Well, no, I'm 50. I'm loud and proud and proud of it.
Welcome to the club, by the way.
That would have been, I probably, so I graduated in 87 at 17, so 18, 18 or 19, probably 18. Yeah. And so in between those years, I did episodic. God, do you remember the show? They did a spinoff of the original, which I believe was black and white, was Leave It to Beaver. They tried to do a spinoff of the new generations of that family called Still the Beaver. And I remember doing an episode of Still the Beaver.
Still the Beaver.
And an episode of Silver Spoons. And I feel like I was probably 16. That was Ricky Schroeder. And
that's huge.
Remember that?
Yeah, that was big.
So I got to do an episode of that. So I did things like that in between. But the thing with my mom was pretty much the antithesis of a stage mother. She wanted to keep me in school. She really didn't overly love me being in show business. That was kind of my dad's, starting me in that.
Yep.
So she allowed me to do it as long as I stayed in school, and of course went to school on the set when I did get work. But I feel like I worked maybe 2 jobs a year up until high school, until the next, when Baywatch happened. But from the time that we did E.T., I was in 7th grade through high school, I probably worked a couple jobs a year, some modeling jobs here and there, some of these little episodic numbers, and shows. Charles in Charge.
Oh,
also.
Charles in
I
Charge.
Did a few Charles in Charge.
You need to listen to. I interviewed Willie Ames, and it was one of the.
You mentioned that.
Honestly, it was one of the best interviews. He just let it all out. So you need to listen to that whenever you have time. It was really interesting. He told me about his Phoebe Cates and how she broke his heart and all this stuff. So it was good stuff there. Yeah, you have to check that one out. So you did so Charles in Charge and some TV things, but then to give me the time period then. Baywatch for you was what year?
Baywatch was, I want to say, gosh, 89. See, the thing is, do you remember the movies of the week where Sunday night, that was a big deal? You had
Loved it.
right, you had the competing networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, and it was that 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock movie?
Yeah, 8 or 9, the Sunday night movie, yeah.
Right. And then often those movies, if they did really well, would be kind of like a movie of the week backdoor pilot, if it did really well, right, to become a series. And that's kind of the way it went for Baywatch. So we shot a 2-hour movie, Panic at Malibu Pier.
You remember the name.
And then went on to do the series. So, gosh, I know I was right out of high school, but I feel like, because that was 87, so somewhere in 88 or 89 where we shot the movie, and then it takes a while, and then to get the series up and running.
And that was, I mean, that had...
I'm not sure.
Obviously, that was your biggest break.
Well,
or
yeah,
would you say?
I mean, definitely thus far, that was the biggest break up until that point, for sure. And it was NBC, and the funny thing about NBC is at the time it was pretty much the most conservative network. We had to really do everything by the book to get sponsorship, because it was a really expensive show to do. And that's actually, a lot of people don't know this, but the show was not canceled because of ratings. We were number one in our time slot, but it was too expensive. And they wanted the gentleman who owned the rights at the time to come up with, like, I don't know what it was, but it was another $100,000 of his own money per show or something like that. Crazy. Yeah. And he actually ended up relinquishing the rights eventually to the producers, creators, and David. But he ended up closing his studio. So it was a no-go, but NBC just felt like the show was so expensive, because we had all these different units. You had your mainstream storylines, but then second unit and B unit and all the outdoor stuff. So yeah, so that was, it went down for about a year. And then it went back up when it became syndicated, and then it was not NBC anymore.
Yeah, that was huge too. I mean, that franchise went on to just, I mean, it seems like it went on forever.
11 years, I believe.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, so when I guess it's safe to say that launched you into the mainstream, and then you started doing more movies at that point. I know in the list that I saw was Daughter of the Streets in 1990, but for me, Under Siege was the first movie that I saw you in, and Steven Seagal was so huge at that point that, I mean, that's a frontliner movie. Tell me about that experience, and do you think that was one of your bigger movies?
Oh, definitely. And I mean, to get to work with Tommy Lee Jones and Gary Busey as well, because I am a huge fan of both of their work, and has been a huge fan of Tommy Lee Jones for so many years. That's just, the acting is incredible. And so, yeah, that was a good old-fashioned screen test for that film. So you audition, and then we got to the point of screen testing where a few ladies are, it comes down to the wire, and you actually go to a legit sort of setup, film set with the camera and crew. And, before they invest money in someone, they want to make sure there's going to be how you're going to look on the big screen. And I did that for Beverly Hillbillies as well, where they do good old-fashioned screen tests. And so it was quite the process. And we shot that in Mobile, Alabama for about 12 weeks, about 3 months. And I feel like there were about 6 women on set in total. That includes the wardrobe and script supervisor, and about 1,000 men. So it was definitely an interesting. I feel like I learned how to be diplomatic for the first time in my life at that time.
I mean, when you look at the movie, you can tell that. Just forget the crew. You were. I mean, there were no other women hardly in that movie.
No, and in fact, another little fun fact for you. They go back and forth between the room with all the heads of, every place, all the chiefs and everybody, when we're on the phone having the gunfight, and then it goes back to the heads of office there. And so the one woman, in that scene is actually Drew. I don't remember her last name, but she was our script supervisor. So that was like really cool. I love stuff like that. And Andy Davis directed that film, and just he's such a wonderful man and brilliant director. And yeah, so it was an incredible experience. It was a very full experience.
What was it like
time to be
working with Seagal? Because, you know, I'll just be honest, you hear a lot of mixed reviews about him. I love his movies. They're so just fun and eye candy and just action. I love it. But, you know,
Right.
I've heard mixed reviews. Your experience with him was okay?
Right, you know, for me, he just showed up and did his work. You know, like everyone, there are moods for sure. I mean, he definitely always had a big entourage around him, but he just, some days he was, you know, in a better mood than others in terms of being, you know, focused or more relaxed and joking on set. But, you know, that was pretty much it. He showed up, he did his thing, he, you know, left. So, yeah, my experience with him was very professional.
Good. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that, because sometimes you hear mixed things. But you know what you said is exactly right. Everybody has good and bad days. I mean, let's be honest.
Right. Right.
It's just the way it
100%.
is. Yeah. So from, and by the way, I think I texted you this once when it seems like, first of all, Under Siege is on about 75 times a week. I see that movie everywhere on some cable network.
Yeah.
And I told you one time, I said, you must be getting crazy royalties. You're like, well, over time, that kind of diminishes a little bit.
It does. It does. Yeah, every year it will go down. So it's funny. I'm, of course, incredibly grateful for every royalty. But I think there's a big misconception for sure. I've definitely received some 1 cent royalties. And those make me laugh the most, because I wonder how much it costs, not only for the postage,
to print the check,
to print the check, and then the paper, the envelope, and it literally for 1 penny. I remember sending that to my accountant. They didn't catch it. I didn't catch this one.
I'm going to toss this one.
They go down.
So looking at some of your early movies, I know you did the Beverly Hillbillies in '93. That was a big one back in the day. And so what, if you look back over those, and I mean, I'm looking through the list right now. You've done a ton of stuff. How did I miss that you were in Bordello of Blood, by the way? I'm highly upset. I'm going to have to go back and watch that. Because I do love my horror movies. But what were some of your best memories of the movies you've done? Do you have a favorite one that you're most proud of? Sometimes when I ask actors and actresses this, they always say one that people don't think of, you know?
Right. I have two. I have one that's mainstream and one that was an indie. So my most favorite, more mainstream commercial was the Beverly Hillbillies. Everything about it. Literally everything about that film. The studio and 20th Century and the show growing up, watching reruns of the Beverly Hillbillies.
Yes.
And getting the opportunity to play Ellie Mae Clampett and honor that character and keep it trendy, because that was the 90s. At the same time, she was a really endearing character, and I didn't want to lose that. So that was a bit of a challenge. We actually worked with one of the loveliest people I've ever met in my life, and he's no longer with us, but he was this incredible dialect coach to the stars. I mean, he's worked with every single, De Niro and like every amazing actor on the planet, and his name is Robert Easton. And so we worked really hard. And something else, Leah Thompson, another fun fact about that, she ended up being the French nanny, but they weren't sure at first what they wanted her to be, what accent. I don't know what that poor girl went through. I don't know how many accents they put her through. Was it going to be, I don't remember what they were. Was one Russian? But she had to go through legit like dialect lessons.
Oh my gosh.
Until they decided on, it was pretty crazy. But yeah, I love animals. Everything about that I was probably somewhat attacked by every animal on
Well, Ellie Mae loved her animals,
memories. Though. Right, she does. She
That's right.
Dad and the possum and the raccoon and then the deer trying to take me down in one shot. But it was just, I love it. I cannot say enough about that. Penelope Spheris, the director, was a very fierce, strong, no BS woman.
That's awesome.
But what an icon woman to work with, iconic woman. So, director.
And I think
brilliant.
Jim Varney was a comic genius. I love that guy.
So I can't even say enough about Jim Varney. Just to give you an idea, this was one of the coolest, sweetest, kindest people I'd ever met in my life. So interesting. I swear to you, you could choose any topic. I mean, any topic. And he would give you 20 minutes on it. He was so smart. He was such a gentleman. I remember, too, sitting in the makeup trailer once talking to him. I was just blabbing. You know, you sit in makeup for so long, you just small talk. And I remember talking about, we were shooting in North Carolina at some point, I think, were we? Or I had started I think that was Chasers, but I had started a baby clothes collection. That's what it was. I wanted to get like a baby quilt or something, just some stuff. I got a Hope chest in North Carolina, and I was just blabbing about it much the same way I am now. And
where in North Carolina were you guys shooting? Do you have any recollection? Because that's where I live.
Yeah, but not for the Beverly Hillbillies. We were actually shooting Chasers in North Carolina.
Oh, Chasers, yes.
Over, yeah, in Wilmington. But I just remember that I had purchased something in North Carolina that I was telling him about, or some crazy story. Anyway, a year later, after the movie, I get this huge box delivered to me, and Jim Varney remembered that conversation, utter blabbing on my part, and he had this little lady from his little town in Tennessee make me a handmade queen-size quilt, which I still have to this day, and a baby quilt for my Hope chest that he remembered I said I had. And that's the kind of man he was. He was angelic, just gone from us way too soon, so talented, so wonderful. That whole cast, come on. Cloris Leachman, Dabney Coleman, Lily Tomlin, Dietrich Bader, Rob Schneider, Leah Thompson, and I'll leave people out, not intentionally, but the entire cast were just phenomenal. Just that amazing.
That list you went through, plus, let's be honest, wasn't Dennis Hopper involved in that as well?
Dennis Hopper was involved in Chasers. Yeah,
Chasers, that's what I was thinking of, yes.
He also directed that film. So, yeah, he was very much involved. Yeah.
The list of people you've worked with, what a blessed career that is, just from that standpoint alone, you know?
Oh, yeah. I've worked with some amazing people very blessed. Very blessed.
Do you want to, by the way, we mentioned Jim Varney. I just have to say that when I grew up in North Carolina, his commercials, he did, I can't remember which, it's an ice cream company, I think, but he did commercials in North Carolina that everybody loved. And I think everybody knew that at that point he was going to launch onto greater things with his Ernest stuff, because that was the character he played in the commercials, was Ernest.
Right, absolutely, I remember.
That's so cool. So the indie film, you mentioned that there was an indie film that was one of your favorites.
Yeah, this was a film called The Opponent. And we were filming it right around the same time as Girl Fight with Michelle Rodriguez. And we actually had the same fight choreographer for some of our stuff. The storyline was basically a ring girl. That was the character I played, and as in holding up the signs in a boxing ring and, parading around. And I was in an abusive relationship and just sort of become enamored by the boxing sport. And so I become a boxer. And so you watch this girl, come from smacking bubblegum to really, really training just down to the nitty gritty and becoming a boxer. And, that movie was so low budget, and most of the things that we received were all sponsored. Everything was sponsored. I did my own fighting in that movie.
Wow.
Trained with 4 different coaches. We trained at the gym in Brooklyn where Holyfield trained, and I worked my tail off, literally, and it was just quite a very unglamorous but just hardcore, amazing, gritty experience. So that's one that I will always cherish from an acting standpoint. It was really a cool challenge for me.
I love those when you ask a celebrity what their favorites are, because you get answers that you never expect. And so that's one we'll have to look up. And that was, I was looking on the list as you said that. That was around 2000. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly.
So tell us what, so as you're moving on into movies, especially in the 90s. And then did you go through a period where you just sort of slowed down a little bit and said, I'm going to take a break from all this? Or how does that work? Because sometimes it gets to be, it's a lot in your psyche and a lot in your schedule to keep up with Hollywood.
Sure. Well, I moved away, though. I moved out of California, out of Los Angeles. I actually moved to Alberta, Canada for 8.5 years. I did a film there and ended up going back and staying. I just loved it so much. And I'm also, I have Canadian citizenship as well. So,
oh, wow.
And I worked my tail off there too. We did a lot of American, foreign, Canadian co-pros too, where you have like financing that's from sort of the U.S. and internationally. And that was the cool thing, huge thing that Baywatch did for me. Is overseas allowed me to do, other films and work. So that was really cool. So not that I'm saying Canada is across the pond, but I got to do a lot of filmmaking there. And so I worked a lot. But then I got pregnant with my daughter. And it was really at that point that I took a big step back so that
Sure.
I could just be with her, and raise her. And I moved back to the States when she was 3. So I'm back in California, and then just slowly, sort of gradually eased my way back in, just did a few things here and there, maybe a job or 2 jobs a year. But, I have always had so many other interests. It's funny. I have a podcast now, and I was actually just talking about this, how many, I feel like the jack of all trades, master of none, because I've tried so many different things. Just, I have a crazy appetite for a lot of different things, and I have pretty much experimented with, I went to USCI, that was an online school, and got certified in wedding and event planning. I went to real estate school twice, and then that just wasn't the right fit for me. I did a whole angel ministry study thing where I could actually marry people, and that was not for me. I wrote a kid's book, and I did some writing.
Oh,
I
that's
contributed to a book called Making It in High Heels, and this particular one was Women of Philanthropy and Charity, where I got to contribute a chapter. Just different things, just trying different things on, and some producing behind the scenes. And so it's been quite the journey. I always keep a toe in the door, with acting in my acting career. But right now, my new home is a podcast, and I just am super passionate about all things spiritual, about the afterlife, about the occult, about why we're here, about the law of attraction. That has been my passion since I was 11 years old.
It's funny how, like as we get older, and I'm feeling the same thing. So my dream growing up was to always host a celebrity interview show. And so when, my career, when I had a couple of opportunities to go to big markets in television, and I've worked in local TV all across the Southeast, but I had a couple of big opportunities. And at the time, I was so upset that they didn't happen. I almost hosted a show on the Disney Channel, and when I was in my 20s, and I was so excited. And looking back now, I think there's a reason why it didn't happen. I feel like all
Sure.
of us, that there are things that, just like you feel blessed for things that you've gotten a chance to do, and you can always keep a toe in there and just kind of act when you want to. But there's something about what really matters is what happens inside our heart and in our minds, and really that's the big payoff. I think it's not so much what we've done with our career, but it's great to look back, and it's a fun, for me, I have a good talker job. It's fun to do, and I just do this as a hobby, and I love it.
100%. And here you are. I mean, at the end of the day, the only thing that I wish is I want to do everything now. And so
Yes.
we don't get to choose when, but I think, let me please get the meaning and the purpose of this life and make it applicable. Let me not realize this on my deathbed and go, oh, maybe next time. Let me get it now and let me apply it. That's how I feel. I want to get this party started because I feel like all of us, and this is literally what my last 2 podcasts are about, is that every single one of us is born with unique talents, gifts, and abilities. And we are, whether we know it or not, that doesn't change the fact that we are. And in my humble opinion, it is our job to find out what those are and dust them off and shine them up and loud and proud share them with the world. And when you do that, you absolutely contribute to making this universe better. You inspire other people to do the same, to be brave, to have courage, to find their gifts. And it's what we do. We just pay it forward and we keep going. And so I tell young people all the time, listen to your likes and dislikes. Listen. And those little inklings that you get, those are like yours, always wanting to do a celebrity hosting show. Those are what I call whispers from spirit or God, if you will, or the universe, whatever that energy is that you're comfortable with calling it. But those are whispers saying, listen to me, because herein lies your gifts. Your passions will lead you to what your gifts are. We don't always know. It was a painful journey for me. Some people will say, I was born knowing that, I wanted to play ball or do this since the time I was 2. And that is so incredible. I have always been envious of people who have known in their bones what they wanted to do since they could walk and talk. Most of us, however, we have to play what color is our parachute a lot. And we have to kind of figure out what fits and what doesn't, and try this hat on and try this shoe on, and and
That's
keep
true.
going until it is. And I feel like I think so many people, I did for a long time, we beat ourselves up not knowing. And I used to say, how can I be 40, how can I be 45 and still feeling like this? How can I not have found my thing by now? I'm supposed to have found my thing. Why? No one says that. We all have to be born with this thing that we know
That's right.
is our passion.
I mean, for me, it was funny. I grew up. I wasn't listening to myself. When I went to college,
Right.
I remember I got accepted to North Carolina School of the Arts and to UNC Chapel Hill, so North Carolina. And in my mind, I had to make a decision between the arts and academics, which isn't true, but I thought that. And my dad was like, you do either, but we have no money to keep you up if you're a starving actor in New York. So I went to Carolina and I tried to major in chemistry. And that was a joke. I got to organic. I did like science a lot, but I got to organic chemistry, and that told me quickly that I was not going to be a chemist or a doctor. And my roommate was
Right.
my best friend from home, and he said, Chilton, you're not listening to where your heart is. What did you do when you were a kid? And you know what I did? I used to sit in my room with a card table and a little microphone and tape recorder and pretend like I was hosting a show.
Isn't that?
And
See, there it is. Everybody out there, please listen, listen. Go
It's
back to your
true.
childhood. Just listen to those whispers, because that is so spot on.
It's so
That
true.
is spot
Tell us
on.
about
Yeah.
your podcast, because I want to know where everybody can get a hold of this.
Oh, thank you. So it's called Spiritual Alchemy, Developing Your Higher Consciousness with Erika Eleniak. And pretty much anywhere you might want to podcast, iHeartRadio, podcast, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify. And then also my website, which is Real Erika Eleniak blog, .com. That also has I always upload my latest podcast there. So there's a variety of ways that you can find it. And I've got 10 episodes going, and basically it's called Spiritual Alchemy because if you ask me, I'm not one to label. It's too hard, and I change my mind too much. I have a major appetite, as I said, for all things spiritual. So I'm a spiritual alchemist. I'm everything, and I'm nothing. That's kind of the way I describe myself. And I have spent years and years studying various religions and theories and theosophies, and I've just tried on so many different things. I've kind of created my own little mixed salad of what I feel like, what my beliefs are, and what works. And a big part of that is the law of attraction. I think what you really believe, is the reality that you're going to create.
And I have
100%.
up right now, I have your podcast on iHeart.com if people want to take a look at it. I'm showing it right now so everybody can see and get a hold of that. Good for you. I'm so glad that, finding a peace in who we are and what we do in life is so important. And it sounds like you've kind of reached where you are. As you look back and you're talking to people who love to watch you over the years, what do you say? What do you say to people, your fans who have watched you over the years and they still kind of keep up with you and that type of thing? What do you want people to walk away from and say about you as we all get older?
Oh gosh,
that's a deep one, isn't it? Did I throw you a curveball?
No, it's a great question. But it's deep. I think, first of all, thank you. I'm so grateful for you following me, because I could not ever do, none of us actors can do what we do if you guys aren't liking what we're putting out. We just couldn't, so thank you. It's a give and take, I hope. I always really tried to make sure that I had diversity in my career, and I feel like I really got to do that. That was a blessing. It wasn't easy. I created a lot of obstacles for myself with some of the decisions that I made when I was younger, and had to work really hard. So by being able to do different roles, the diversity of it would be nice if people, maybe thought that I entertained them and that I had a wide variety of diversity in the characters and the roles that I played. And just, it's nice to be able to inspire people. That'll just take me right back to what I'm doing now. And what I said earlier is that every single one of us is here to leave this place better than the way we found it when we came into it. That's how I feel.
That's so true.
If we can inspire each other to do that, job well done.
Yes.
And, you're living on purpose. So if I can do that, and if I've done that for anyone, then just thank you. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to have been able to do that.
Well, that is phenomenal. Thank you so much for taking time out. And gosh, I could have gone on forever asking about a bunch of other movies. You've just done a lot of cool stuff, and your career has you've done fun things, you've done serious things, deep things, and it seems like you found your place. Good luck in the best job in the world, which is being a mom, I'm sure, because I have 4 kids. We identify with that. It's the greatest thing.
Yes.
It's the toughest and the best thing we'll ever do, to be a parent, a good parent.
I always say she gave me legs. And I don't mean that figuratively. I just feel like I was, in terms of the way that I live now and what you said earlier, when you get older, you learn what's important. Well, have a child, and that'll really wake you up and turn your world upside down. So I feel like I was sleepwalking until my daughter was born.
It centers you. It centers you, and it brings you back to where you should have been all along, really.
Right. It gives you life. So she has given me life 100%.
Thank you so much for taking time, and it's just been awesome. I'm so happy for you.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad we finally made it work, and I'm just really grateful to have had the opportunity to speak to you and your wonderful listeners. So thank you. Stay safe in this crazy time.
Absolutely. Stay in touch, and let's do it again. We'll do it again sometime soon, okay?
Sounds wonderful.
Absolutely. Erika Eleniak joining us. So excited that she was here. Listen, I want everybody to know, just make sure that you check out the other episodes, our older episodes, okay? Because I mentioned Willie Ames earlier. That was a heck of an interview. And I also want you to know that Tippi Hedren, we interviewed her. And if you're not familiar, you need to go back and look at some Hitchcock movies. She was in The Birds. And she had incredible stories to tell about Alfred Hitchcock. If you have not seen The Girl, which is an HBO movie, it was about her experience with Hitchcock when she was in The Birds. That was pretty interesting. That's all I have to say. It was controversial, very controversial what happened to her. Anyway, just some other episodes I wanted you guys to get a hold of if you can and listen to them. I want to thank Erika for taking time for being with us. So much fun. Next time we're going to line up another interview. We'll have a good one for you, I promise. Check us out on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and waitiknowthis.com. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks for joining in. We'll see you later.